Hello ladies and gentlemen, so today we are going to be doing missionary activities in Zimbabwe. We are going to be looking at their negative and positive effects in Zimbabwe. What exactly the missionaries did which was good and what the missionaries did which was right in Zimbabwe. And we are also going to be looking at how concession seekers, traders, hunters led to the colonization of Zimbabwe. So stay tuned if you want help with this. Okay, so we are going to start looking at the missionaries. So the missionary activities. Okay, let me grab my presentation. So my presentation here. Okay, so we are going to start with their positive. With their positive what activities? That which they did, which was okay in the what? In Zimbabwe. Sorry. Okay, so the first thing that the missionaries did is that they inoculated cattle and they treated people. Okay, so we see that John Smith Moffat, with his kit, he was able to treat Lobengula, who was suffering from what? From gout. And we also see that the missionaries, they inoculated cattle which suffered from different diseases. Okay, another thing is that the missionaries, they opened mission stations, clinics, hospitals, and school where people were educated. Okay, so moving on, we see that the missionaries, they introduced new crops. So new crops was beneficial to the people because new crops, they were now able to sustain their diet, and they now had what? Multiple crops in order to indulge in commercial farming. So okay, they introduced a new farming method such as commercial farming, which I have been talking about. That was another advantage of the brought by the missionaries in Zimbabwe. Now people were able to make money out of agriculture, make a living out of agriculture. This was introduced by the missionaries. Okay, so we move on and we see what are other things which the missionaries did in Zimbabwe. Okay, so another thing that the missionaries did is that the missionaries introduced what was known as Western civilization, because they believe Africa was a dark continent. So they civilized Africans because in Africa there was paganism and barbarism. Okay, so when we say barbarism, there were some barbaric acts like witchcraft, killing of twins. It was dismissed by when the missionaries came. So now we see that the missionaries, they civilized They civilized people in Zimbabwe. Okay, so let's move on and see what led to the missionaries' failure to civilize the Ndebele, or to spread their influence to the Ndebele. What made them fail? So let's look at the reasons for missionaries' failure in the Ndebele state. Okay, so number one, the missionaries, they failed in the Ndebele state because the Ndebele were unwilling to accept Christianity because they had a strong religion, and they saw Christianity not going along with their beliefs. Thus, the missionaries failed to influence the Ndebele people. Okay, so we also see that they also failed to influence, or they failed in the Ndebele state because the Ndebele were suspicious about the intentions of foreigners, especially the whites. So the Ndebele now, they were suspicious with these people. They had their suspicions, so they were not able, or they were not willing to accept the influence which came with these missionaries. Thus the missionaries failed. Okay, so we also see that the Ndebele military led to the failure of missionaries. Okay, so the Ndebele people, they had a strong military. Thus, the missionaries, they faced the resistance which was offered by the army. So that influence was hard. Now it became hard to influence people in the Ndebele state. Okay, some missionaries, they were inexperienced to deal with the Ndebele people. Thus, this on its own, it made the missionaries to fail to influence the people in the Ndebele state. Okay, so now let's look at the non-benefits of missionaries in Zimbabwe. what were the non-benefits or the negative impacts of the Ndebele, of the missionaries in Zimbabwe. Okay, so number one, the missionaries themselves, their activities led to division among local people. So local people now, there were divisions among local people because some of them were converted to Christianity and some didn't want. They wanted to stay believing in their religion. Thus this made divisions and led to civil wars in the Ndebele state amongst the converted and the non-converted people. Okay, so another non-benefits which were brought by the missionaries, that the missionaries, they attacked African culture. Those converted now, they were to take a European name. Like we see that some other people, they were now called John, Mary, living their identity, abandoning their culture, their names, which they were called, for example, Tapiwa and stuff. Okay, so we also move. Another non-benefit brought by the missionaries is that missionaries left missionary work to employed concession companies. So now they left their missionary work now, and now they were working with concession companies, those concession seekers like Cecil John Rhodes. So at first when they come, they wanted to spread influence, they wanted to introduce new crops, but then now they started being employed by those people who wanted to colonize Africa. So they were influenced now by these people. Thus the missionaries had non-benefits in Zimbabwe. Okay, so the missionaries, they also wrote reports about Zimbabwe. So we also see that a guy called Thomas Morgan wrote a number of articles, which so these articles now, they were sent to international press, and so portraying the Ndebele as bloodthirsty. So now this we also see that these were negative reports. We see Thomas Morgan now writing to the international press that the Ndebele people were bloodthirsty. They were people who liked killing. Okay, so we move on, and now let's look at the role played by missionaries, hunters, traders, and concession seekers in the colonization of Zimbabwe. How did the hunters, concession seekers, traders led to the colonization of Zimbabwe? Okay, so we first look at the missionaries. So Robert Moffat paved the way for colonization of Zimbabwe. If you remember, Robert Moffat, he met with Lobengula's father, Muzilikazi, before they had arrived in Matabeleland. Okay, so Robert Moffat himself, he paved the way now for colonization of Zimbabwe when he negotiated with with Muzilikazi and opened a mission station in Inyati. So this mission station now, they were to accommodate the whites upon their arrival in Zimbabwe. Okay, so we move. Okay, the missionaries, they send reports to Europe about the riches of Zimbabwe. Thus these missionaries, they led to the colonization of Zimbabwe. So we've looked at two things. We looked at Robert Moffat, the father of John Smith Moffat, building or establishing a mission station which could accommodate the whites. And we also see that these people, these missionaries, they reported back about the riches of Zimbabwe back in Europe. So we also see that. Okay, let's move. Missionaries were used as colonialists, as agent of imperialism. In other words, the missionaries, they paved the way for colonialism here in Zimbabwe. Okay, so we also look at John Smith Moffat and C.D. Helm now being involved in the negotiations of signing the Rad Concession and the Moffat Treaty. Okay, in other words, there is a question which will come saying, justify the assertion that the flag followed the Bible. So you now know what that means. That means that you are going to examine how exactly the missionaries caused, or how exactly the missionaries were beneficial and non-beneficial in Zimbabwe. Okay, so let's look at how European hunters led to the colonization of Zimbabwe. Okay, so when we look at hunters, so we have hunters like Henry Hartley and Karl Mauch. So these people, they led to the colonization of Zimbabwe because Just like the missionaries, these people, they reported back in Europe about the riches of Zimbabwe. And if we look closely, there is a guy called Frederick Courtney Selous, acted as a paid agent of imperialism by guiding Rhodes' pioneer column into Mashonaland. So when now Rhodes had organized what? The pioneer column, it was Frederick Selous who was a hunter who guided these people. Okay, so lastly we look at traders such as so we have traders such as George Westbeach. Okay, so these traders now were interested in gold trading territories. So now they reported about the abundance of gold in what? They reported about the abundance of gold in Zimbabwe and Matabeleland. This is stimulated. So this stimulated now the interest of people like Rhodes to come and colonize Zimbabwe. Thus, this is all on the missionaries that you need to know. So thank you guys. Stay tuned and see you on another video.